Queer Chair by Charles Dickens. One winter's evening, just as it began to grow dusk, a man in a gig might have been seen urging his tired horse along the road which leads across Marlborough Downs. The weather was so bad that nothing was out but mud and water. "Cheer up, old girl," said Tom. "The first house we come to we'll put up at, so the faster you go, the sooner it's over. So-ho, old girl, gently, gently." Tom had no sooner finished speaking than she started forward at a speed which made the clay-coloured gig rattle until she drew up of her own accord before a roadside inn about half a quarter of a mile from the end of the downs. In less than 5 minutes, Tom was ensconced in the room opposite the bar before a substantial, matter-of-fact, roaring fire. But this was not all, for in the bar, seated at the nicest possible little table, drawn close up before the brightest possible little fire, was a buxom widow of somewhere about 48 or thereabouts, with a face as comfortable as the bar, landlady and supreme ruler over all these agreeable possessions. There was only one drawback to the beauty of the whole picture, and that was a tall man in a brown coat and bright basket buttons and black whiskers and wavy black hair, who was seated at tea with the widow, and who, it required no great penetration to discover, was in a fair way of persuading her to be a widow no longer. Tom Smart was by no means of an envious disposition, but somehow or other the tall man did rouse what little gall he had, and did make him feel that the tall man was as high in the widow's favour as he was in size. Tom was fond of hot punch. I may venture to say he was very fond of hot punch, and it had been long his ambition to stand in a bar of his own, just like this, in a green coat, knee cords and tops, and he felt very justly and properly indignant that the tall man should be in a fair way of keeping such an excellent house, while he, Tom Smart, was as far off from it as ever. So, after deliberating over the 2 last tumblers, Tom Smart at last arrived at the satisfactory conclusion that he was a very ill-used and persecuted individual, and had better go to bed. It was a good large room, with big closets and a couple of oaken presses that would have held the baggage of a small army. But what struck Tom's fancy most was a strange, grim-looking, high-backed chair, carved in the most fantastic manner, with a flowered damask cushion and round knobs at the bottom of the legs carefully tied up in red cloth. "Well," said Tom, "I never saw such a rum concern as that in my days," and looked at the chair again. He couldn't make anything of it, though, so he got into bed and fell asleep. In about half an hour, Tom woke up with a start from a confused dream of tall men and tumblers of punch, and the first object that presented itself to his waking imagination was the queer chair, and, suddenly, as he looked at it, a most extraordinary change seemed to come over it. The carving of the back gradually assumed the lineaments and expression of an old, shrivelled human face. The damask cushion became an antique flapped waistcoat. The round knobs grew into a couple of feet, encased in red cloth slippers, and the whole chair looked like a very ugly old man with his arms akimbo. Tom sat up in bed and rubbed his eyes to dispel the illusion. No, the chair was an ugly old gentleman, and what was more, he was winking. He began to grow rather indignant when he saw the old gentleman winking and leering at him, and at length he resolved that he wouldn't stand it, and said in a very angry tone, "What the devil are you winking at me for?" "Because I like it, Tom Smart," said the chair. "How do you know my name, old nutcracker face?" inquired Tom Smart. "I know everything about you, Tom. Everything. You're very poor, Tom. "I certainly am," said Tom Smart. "But how came you to know that?" "Never mind that. You're much too fond of punch." Tom blushed and was silent. "The widow's a fine woman. Remarkably fine woman, eh, Tom? And I am her guardian." "Are you?" inquired Tom Smart. "I knew her mother and her grandmother. She was very fond of me. Made me this waistcoat. I want you to marry the widow." "Me, sir?" said Tom. "You," said the old gentleman. "Bless your reverend locks, she wouldn't have me." And Tom sighed involuntarily as he thought of the bar. "Wouldn't she?" said the old gentleman firmly. "No, no," said Tom. "There's somebody else in the wind, a tall man with black whiskers." "She will never have him." "Well, if you stood in the bar, you'd tell another story." "Pooh, pooh," said the old gentleman. "I know all about that." "About what?" said Tom. "The kissing behind the door and all that sort of thing. However, Tom, I'm wandering from the point. This man is a rascally adventurer. The moment he married the widow, he would sell off all the furniture and run away. She would be deserted and reduced to ruin, and I should catch my death of cold in some broker's shop." "Well, yes, but—" "Don't interrupt me. Of you, Tom, I entertain a very different opinion, for I well know that if you once settled yourself in a public house, you would never leave it. Therefore you shall have her, and he shall not." "Well, what is to prevent it?" said Tom Smart. "He's already married." "Oh, how can I prove it?" The old gentleman untucked his arm from his side and pointed to one of the oaken presses. "He little thinks that in the right-hand pocket of a pair of trousers in that press he has left a letter entreating him to return to his disconsolate wife with 6 babes, and all of them small ones." As the old gentleman solemnly uttered these words, his features grew less and less distinct, and his figure more shadowy. The light faded gently away, and Tom Smart fell back on his pillow and dropped to sleep. Morning aroused Tom from the lethargic slumber into which he had fallen on the disappearance of the old man. "How are you, old boy?" The chair remained motionless. "Which press did you point to? You can tell me that," said Tom. The old man would not be drawn into conversation. "It's not much trouble to open it, anyhow," said Tom, getting out of bed very deliberately. He walked up to one of the presses. The key was in the lock. He turned it, and there was a pair of trousers. He put his hand into the pocket and drew forth the identical letter the old gentleman had described. "Queer sort of thing, this," said Tom Smart. "Very queer." But as there was nothing in either to lessen the queerness, he thought he might as well dress himself and settle the tall man's business at once, just to put him out of his misery. "Good morning, ma'am," said Tom Smart, closing the door of the little parlour as the widow entered. "Good morning, sir," said the widow. "What will you take for breakfast, sir? There's a very nice ham and a beautiful cold larded fowl." These words roused Tom from his reflections. Thoughtful creature, comfortable provider. "Who is that gentleman in the bar, ma'am?" inquired Tom. "His name is Dickens, sir," said the widow, slightly blushing. "He's a tall man," said Tom. "He's a very fine man, sir, and a very nice gentleman." "Ah," said Tom. "Is there anything more you want, sir?" inquired the widow, rather puzzled by Tom's manner. "Why, yes," said Tom. "My dear ma'am, will you have the kindness to sit down for one moment?" The widow looked much amazed, but she sat down, and Tom sat down too, close beside her. Somehow or other, the palm of Tom's hand fell upon the back of the widow's hand, and remained there while he spoke. "My dear ma'am, you deserve a very excellent husband. You do indeed." "Lor, sir," said the widow, as well she might. "I scorn to flatter, but you deserve a very admirable husband, and whoever he is, he'll be a very lucky man." "I'm sure I'm very much obliged to you, sir, for your good opinion," said the buxom landlady, half laughing. "And if I ever marry again—" "If? Well," said the widow, laughing outright, "when I do, I hope I shall have as good a husband as you describe." "Jinkins to wit," said Tom. "Lor, sir!" exclaimed the widow. "Oh, don't tell me," said Tom. "I know him." "I am sure nobody who knows him knows anything bad of him," said the widow, bridling up at the mysterious air with which Tom had spoken. "Hem!" said Tom Smart. The widow inquired whether Tom thought it gentlemanly to take away the character of another gentleman behind his back. "I'll say it to him fast enough," said Tom, "only I want you to hear it first." "What is it?" "I'll astonish you," said Tom, putting his hand in his pocket. "If it's that he wants money, I know that already, and you needn't trouble yourself." "Pooh! Nonsense! That's nothing," said Tom Smart. "Oh dear, what can it be?" exclaimed the poor widow. "Don't be frightened. You won't scream." No, let me see it." He placed the letter in the widow's hand. The widow rocked herself to and fro, and wrung her hands. "Oh, the deception and villainy of the man!" "Frightful, my dear ma'am, but compose yourself," said Tom Smart. "Oh, I can't compose myself," shrieked the widow. "I shall never find anyone else I can love so much." "Oh, yes, you will, my dear soul," said Tom Smart, letting fall a shower of the largest-sized tears in pity for the widow's misfortunes. In the energy of his compassion, he had put his arm round the widow's waist, and the widow, in a passion of grief, had clasped Tom's hand. She looked up in Tom's face and smiled through her tears. Tom looked down in hers and smiled through his.